It's time to take a look at the presidential swings in each state between 1976 and 2024. We're going to go from Carter to the second term of Trump, and we'll see which states have gotten redder and bluer. So before we get to the data and the map, let's take a look at the background information. Here's 1976. Jimmy Carter defeated incumbent Gerald Ford. It was close, though. He finished with 297 electoral votes. He carried 23 states plus D.C., and that got him just a majority of the popular vote at 50.1. Gerald Ford, who assumed the presidency after Richard Nixon, he was defeated, but he finished with 240 electoral votes and 27 states. That was worth 48% of the vote. Then super quick, it's 2024. Trump won it with 312. He carried 31 states plus Maine second. That was worth 49.8%. Harris took the loss with 226. She got 19 states and D.C. and Nebraska second, and that was good enough for 48.3%. And that's going to take us into the data on this nice looking spreadsheet. On the left, we've got the states. Then we've got the 76 vote for Carter, then for Ford. Then it's the 24 vote for Harris, then Trump. Then it's the shifts for the Dems between those two elections, followed by the Republicans. The last column is the net shift between the two parties between the two elections. There's also shading here. The darkest colors are 10 or more points. The lightest are going to be under 5%. So let's dive in and start with Alabama. Here the winner was Jimmy Carter. It's the last time the Dems won it, and he got it with 55.7. Gerald Ford finished with a distant 42.6. 48 years later, Kamala Harris sank down to 34.1. Trump won the state with 64.6. That's a loss of 21.6 for the Dems, a gain of 22 for the GOP. And overall, a total net shift, a big 43.6% swing away from the Dems and toward the Republicans. So that's how this works. Let's quickly go through the rest of these states. Alaska had a blue swing of 9.1. Arizona, double digits at 11. Then Arkansas, another southern state, that actually had the biggest shift out of every state. That went a colossal 60.6 toward the GOP. Now we've got some swings toward the left. We've got California at 22, Colorado 22.5, Connecticut just a little less at 19.7, and Delaware less than half that at 9.3. Florida, on the other hand, got a lot redder at 18.4. Georgia, Carter's home state, swung massively toward the GOP at 35.9. Hawaii went toward the Dems at 20.6. Idaho redder at 13.7. Illinois was similar in the opposite direction at 12.9. Now we've got some red swings. It's Indiana 11.3, Iowa 12.2, Kansas 8.6, Kentucky a big 37.7, Louisiana 10 less than that at 27.7. Then it's Maine, which got bluer by 20 points less than that at 7.7. Maryland is back up there, bluer at 22.5. Massachusetts single digits here toward the Dems at 9.5. Michigan, home state of Gerald Ford, got 4% bluer. Minnesota, home state of Carter's running mate, Walter Mondale, it swung 8.7 toward the right. In that same direction, it's Mississippi at 24.8, Missouri 22, and Montana 12.5. Now we've got Nebraska, which had the smallest shift out of any state. It barely moved at all. It's almost the exact same margin, just a near perfect 0.1% toward the Dems. Nevada was barely more than that, a mild 1.3 bluer. New Hampshire is in that direction by 14.2. New Jersey as well at 8.1. New Mexico 8.5, and New York at even 8. Now more red shifts. North Carolina 14.3. North Dakota 30.6. Ohio, an extremely tight margin at 76, but it got 11.2 redder, and Oklahoma way redder at 33.1. Oregon, just like Ohio, extremely tight, only a 0.1% margin, but this state went toward the Dems at 14.5. Pennsylvania, a mild red shift of 4.4. Rhode Island, an even milder blue shift of 2.4. Now more red shifts. South Carolina, a big 30.9. South Dakota, 27.7. Tennessee, 42.7. Texas, 16.8. And Utah got moderately bluer at 7.5. Vermont shifted the exact same amount as Tennessee, but it was in the opposite direction, and that was the biggest shift on here toward the Dems at 42.7. Virginia, a little bit bluer at 7. Washington, way bluer at 22.1. West Virginia, just under Arkansas for the biggest red shift at 58.1. Wisconsin shifted a little bit toward the Republicans at 2.6. And Wyoming shifted a lot redder at 26.3. Then it's Washington, D.C. That was bluer at 18.7. Then it's your national popular vote shift. That swung 3.6% toward the Republicans. So that's it. Those are all of the states and all of the shifts. Now let's take all this data. Let's help visualize it by putting it on a map. And here it is. We've got similar shading. The darkest colors are at least 10%. This time, the very lightest colors are under 1%. That would be the tilt margin. And we've only got one state on here this time. That's Nebraska. So 4 levels of shading. And what are the takeaways from any of these shifts? Well, Republicans absolutely dominated in the South. Back in 76, Dems had a ton of strength. The full political realignment hadn't yet occurred. That goes into most of the Midwest and the upper Great Plains. The Dems do well on the West Coast, Alaska, the Northeast, and much of the Southwest. And if you go by the current electoral votes, states where the Dems gained total 262, Republicans just barely edge it out at 276. Both of these were technically close elections. Carter's popular vote share was higher, but Trump did better in the Electoral College. Also, Carter being from Georgia obviously boosted his standing in the South. Plus, post-Watergate, the country was in the mood to go back toward the Dems. But Gerald Ford did make it close. He won his home state of Michigan, but he did lose surrounding Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. But then again, the entire map looks totally different than what we're used to today. The West Coast all the way through Illinois was all red, and the South and much of the Northeast was blue. That's totally unrecognizable from the current map. So a lot of states did move way into double digits in one direction or the other, especially the states in the South. But you gotta give it to Nebraska. They had almost zero movement whatsoever. They're voting now how they voted way back in 76. But also in 76, it was extremely competitive in Ohio, which was won by Carter, and Oregon, which was won by Ford. There's two states that were basically lined up in 76, but then they went in totally opposite directions. Also on this map, you've got Utah, which is usually dark blue on most of my shift videos. This time it's under 10%, so it didn't swing as much. In the Northeast, you've got Rhode Island, which shifted blue, but not by that much compared to the surrounding states. You've also got Virginia, which used to be reliably red, and you've got Minnesota, which is still blue, but it did get moderately redder. There's a bunch of other states you could point out: Alaska, Texas, Florida, Arizona, Nevada, Delaware. But the bottom line is, once you go back 5 decades like this, you're bound to see some political realignment in a bunch of states, and that's exactly what we get. Some moved a ton, some barely moved at all. The reasons for the movement is also going to vary from state to state. But this isn't about why it happened. This is about what happened. And these are the shifts from 1976 to 2024. So let me know in the comments, what do you think about any of the shifts in any of these states? Which 2 or 3 states surprised you the most? Which surprised you the least? What other takeaways were you able to pull out? And how much of an impact do you think the candidates had on these shifts? Let me know what you think down below on your way out. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Join if you'd like to support the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.